Okay, so welcome everyone. Welcome to the new video. In this video, I'll speak in English. So if you don't understand each part, let's say some part, you can actually comment inside the comment sections. So I just try to because I think sometimes it's really hard to explain in Khmer because some keyword or technical word is not really explainable in Khmer. So um, another reason that I want to I another reason that I choose to explain in English because I just want to practice my English a little bit. Okay, all right. So hope you don't mind about my English actions. I don't know what kind of action I'm having right now, but I hope you can understand it well. Okay. Okay, so today I have a small project to share you. I want to in this video I want to discuss about the different usage and how we can use the Vuex and Pinia, right? So if you talk about Vuex and Pinia, we are talking about the state management inside Vue projects, right? I think since I think Pinia was introduced. I don't know when it was released, but it was released. I think a bit long ago. I'm not sure how long it is because I don't remember the release date. But I think the concept of PD is actually come up after the Vue 3 was released as well. So it actually introduced a lot of new way to handle this state inside Vue app. Okay, so why we actually need to use Pinia if we already have the Vuex, right? So as we know, Vuex is actually also used for store management, right? State management as well, global state management. And Pinia also used for state management. So what is the difference between these two, right? So if you take a look at the example here, I have two exact the same. Actually, it is the same cards here. So if you take a look at the left side, so we have one card is actually for Vuex store. So I only have one state here. It's actually the account status, account value, and the below one is actually the double count. So actually every time I increase the count by 1, so this one will actually double it. So let's say I increase the count to 1, you see here. So the current count, the double count will actually get the current count and then multiply by 2. So we will get the double count. So just like that. So this is just how we increase or decrease the state, the global. This is actually the global state. So we can use it in everywhere. So every time you modify the state, it will actually update the components. Everywhere you use this state here. Okay, the same thing with the Vuex store card. We have also Pinia store, which implement the Pinia. So the same functionality, right? So you increase the count, the double count get multiplied, right? Okay, so if you take a look at the source code, you can see I have two folders, one for Pinia store and then another one for Vuex store, right? Okay, you might wonder, you might ask, is it really possible to use Vuex alongside with Pinias? About this question, I also I used to ask myself before whether we can actually use the Vuex with Pinia inside one single project or not. But as I take a look at the documentations, it actually recommend you to migrate the Vuex to Pinia. If you take a look at the documentations, so we have the migration guide about So actually I think you can only migrate, wait, where? Migration. Okay, migrations. So basically you can actually migrate only Vuex version 4 uh, or below version 4 of Vuex. If you are using Vuex version 5, I think it's a little bit hard to migrate to Pinia. But in this example, I just want to show you the different implementation of Pinia and Vuex. So let's go back to our source code. So as you can see here, so inside my apps here, so I have one. So this is just my class here. I just write some CSS here. So for container, just to display like something like that, right? So I have store for each store. So basically I use the script setup. So this one is, so if you want to know about this, you can take a look at the documentation about the script tag. The setup script. So this one is basically reduce the boilerplate of your components, but it actually set your component to private as well. Okay, so let's talk about this state here, about the component here. So I have my component here, the Vuex store and the Pinia store. So the way I'm creating the Vuex store, so this is the syntax of creating Vuex store. So inside Vuex store, you need to actually import the create store from Vuex, and then you have to define your store. This is how you define it. So inside Vuex store, in order to create Vuex store, you need 4 things, right? One is state. You have to define your state. You have to tell Vuex what is your current state right now, because so right now I have one count as variables right here. So this will be my state, and you have to also specify the getter. So in case you don't want to use the getter, you can also remove it. But in this case, I want to show you how to use getter as well. We also have mutations, and now we also have the action, right? So you have to, there's 4 parts in create. So in Vuex, there is a flow which you have to follow. So as I go through the documentations, it actually recommends you to call the mutation directly inside your UI. Let's say you not supposed to call the mutation directly inside your UI here. So the best way, I think, the recommended way to call the mutation, let's say you want to modify some state, is to go through the action, right? So you have to call the action inside the component, and then the action will actually look for the mutations. So in this case, it's actually, let's say in the action, let's say we call this increase count action. So the increase count action will actually have one default argument. So in this case, it's context. So we will be able to get the access to the context of the Vuex. So inside context, we can call the commit. So you can call the commit the mutation by using the context.commit and specify the name of your mutations. So in case here, so we are calling, so when we call the action increase count, the increase count action will actually look for the increment mutation, and then it will actually update the state. So after updating the state, so the value of state will be changed, right? So the same thing, you call the action call the mutations, and then the mutation will actually update the state. So when the state update, you know that the state is changing, so it will automatically update your UI, right? So okay, so after your state get updated, you will be able to access to the getters. So what is getters? So getter is actually I think I like to call it a functions, right? In this case, I'm not sure what it's called, but this is actually one of the function inside of Vuex where you can get the access to getters. So if you take a look at here, so okay, let's just comment this out first. We will talk about only the Vuex store. So here so in order to use the Vuex store, you have to import. Okay, I just forgot how to, after you create the store, you have to actually register it inside the main.ts. So you have to make sure you register it here. So inside your main.ts, make sure you import that counter. So since I export the counter store as default, I don't need to actually use the same name. I just import the counter store, and then I just use the app.use counter. So in this case, so by writing like this, you can actually register your Vuex inside your Vue projects. Okay, so next after we register the store, we can import and use it inside import and use the Vuex store inside our components. So how do we use the use store, right? So in order to use Vuex, you have to import the I think this is composable hooks. I think this is, if someone worked with React before, I think you probably familiar with this, which we call hooks inside React. But I think in Vue we call this as the composable. So we will call the use store composable from Vuex. So this one we will we declare the name of our store. So we assign store into equal to use store. So we can use the store here. So inside store, you can actually call a few things. So we have we can actually call store. So you see here. So I have the two buttons right here. I have two buttons. One is when we click the minus I button, it actually call the minus functions here, and then it the same with add, it gonna call the add function here. And I also put the my state here. So you can see here I call the store.state.count. So this way you can access the current value of your state, right? So if I don't use .count, so if you take a look at the example, oh, I think something's wrong, because I think, okay, Pinia was called again. I think something's wrong with Pinia. We don't want to import the Pinia. You see here, count. So if you don't specify your state, so this one will actually printing the whole state of your store, right? So in this case, I want to actually access only the count right here. So in that case, we can write .count. So it will, I think it will just get back to the original count here, right? So okay, so I think this is very straightforward, right? When you click the minus button, it call the minus actually call the minus functions right here. So it actually call the store and then call the dispatch. So in order to call an actions, you have to use the dispatch function right here. You use the dispatch function and then you specify the action name, right? Okay, so if you see here, so I'm using the store.dispatch and then decrease count. So where is this decrease count? So decrease count is the action name. So you see here, this decrease count. So in this dispatch right here, we don't have to pass anything, since we only need to pass the action name. So the action name you see here, commit, and then we receive one argument as the string. So the string right here is actually the action names, right? So we call the store and we dot dispatch, it means calling the action with the action name. So after we click on this buttons right here, minus, it will call this action, and then this action will be a trigger, right? So when this action trigger, it will look for the commit decrement, right? So where is commit decrements go to look for, right? So if you talk about the context.commit, so the commit will actually look for the mutation, right? So when you want to make some change to the state, you have to call the commits, right? Commits. So in this case, it actually look for the commit name, right? So commit name, so what is commit? So we are looking for decrement. So decrement will actually go to mutation and look for decrement function, right? So it means that it call this action got fired, action look for mutation, and then call this function right here, which it will mutate, or it will change the state by decrement the current value by 1, right? So after just like that, when we click on the button, the action got fired. The action look for the mutation, and the mutations is actually changing the state. So when you see the state is changing, it will update the UI based on the current value, right? Okay, so after the state got changed, so after the state got changed by the mutations, the getter here, you see the getter here is actually also get recalculate. So this one is got recalculate. So if I get the double count here, you will see here, store dot getter. So you have the ability to access different part of your Vuex. So if you want to access your store, you can use store dot state. Make sure you declare your store at the script as well. So here you use store dot state to access your state, store dot getter to access your getter. So if you want to access your actions, in that case you use the store dot dispatch. But if you want to call your mutation directly, let's say this one, if you don't want to call the action, you can just call the commit directly. So by calling the commits, you can actually call the mutation directly. So in this case, let's say decrement, let's say just call this name decrement, and since it does not require any extra argument, so we don't have to pass anything. So I will comment this one out. Instead of calling action, you can actually call the commit directly, right, from the template. So when I save the code, it actually saved, and then I will go back to our application. I will refresh it, click on the minus button. You see it's still working, right? But why we don't just call the mutation directly, right? Why we have to call action and then we ask the action to call the mutation, and the mutation go to mutate or change the state? Why don't we just call the mutation directly to change the state, right? So there's also a documentation about that part as well if you want to see more. So I think inside mutation, so as I read through this document here, it said okay, here it said mutation must be synchronous, right? So it said one important rule to remember the mutation handler: function must be synchronous, right? So it's give us some example. So some mutation state, right? So in case you have some API call inside mutations, so in this case, if let's say, so for mutation, so if you okay, let's imagine we are debugging the app looking for the dev2 mutation log. For every mutation log, the dev2 to capture before and after, right? So each mutations will be captured by the dev tool. So in that case, I think if you take a look at the dev tool, you will see here, I think if you install the view dev tool, you will be able to get the access to the dev tool. But how do I, okay, where is my view? No, where is my view dev tool? I'm not sure. Okay, let's try to open it again. Okay, here it is. So if you take a look at the view dev tool, you will see your state here. So if you take a look at the Vuex okay, timeline, I think Vuex. So we have two timelines here. One is view mutation and view action. So when I click on the button here, you see here the timeline. So if you take a look at the timeline here, okay, so okay, timeline here. So we have one single mutation here, decrement. So decrement will actually set the count to -1, right? But if you call asynchronously inside the mutation, the dev tool will not be able to track down the mutation start or finish state, right? So I think I'm not really getting this as well, because so if you want to know more, you can actually take a look more in this part. So there's no way dev2 to know when the callback is actually called, right? Any state mutation performed in callback is essentially untrackable. So if you perform any asynchronous function inside the mutations, the dev2 will actually lost to track lost track of your mutation, right? So that is the reason that it's not recommended to use the call asynchronous function inside mutation. So if we take a look at our codes here, that's why instead of calling, so instead of directly, so if you are not calling any asynchronous function, you can actually call the commit directly, right? But somehow if you do like this, it somehow costs, I think it's not really cost anything, because the reason that you want to use the action, because you want to perform some asynchronous function, right? Asynchronous call. But in case you don't have any asynchronous call, you can just use the store.commit directly. I think that's the case, right? So this one is called when you have any asynchronous. Let's say okay, so let's say you have some, okay, let's say you have some calling, let's say, okay, I think I'm gonna have another example here. Let's say action, you want to fetch to do, right? So inside fetch to do, the same thing, we have context. Okay, I just gonna copy, I think here. Okay, so here we have the, okay, let's say you have the some API calling, let's say a response equal to fetch, okay, fetch, then dot then response.json, and then we have dot then JSON. So in this case we get the result from the JSON placeholder. So after that you can commit, you can call the I think we're gonna have another store, let's say to-dos, and then I think inside to-dos, I think just put any, because we were not talking about the type yet. Okay, JSON, we got a JSON, and then we just commit. Okay, we have to write our mutation as well. So this one is set to-dos. Okay, set to-dos, state, right, to-dos any, and then state dot to-dos is actually equal to to-dos, right? So this is how we are modifying the mutation, modifying the state using mutation. So I'm gonna call this mutation inside my actions. So after we have successfully received the response from JSON placeholder, I just gonna set the call the context, call the mutations. So by just writing context dot context dot commit. So this way we can call the mutation. I will just call to do, set to do, and pass down the response from the JSON placeholder, right? So I think it's key we can use await, so you just to make sure that you put async as well. So this is how we fetch the async await function. Okay, so here we use await, okay, right? So in that case we're gonna have the another button, let's say button types button. Okay, so instead of calling this, I'm gonna use fetch to do's. So I'm gonna have another function at the bottoms here, const fetch to do's equal to so I will just use because it is the async function. I'm gonna call the await store dot dispatch. So we are calling the function fetch to do. Okay, so I'm gonna fetch to do here, fetch to do here. So I'm gonna just print out my result on top of it here. I just gonna, okay, just put another one. Okay, here to do's, right? So to do's no getter, we're gonna get access the state store.state.to-dos. okay, I hope this worked, but if it's not working, I think okay, so close the dev tools, refresh. Okay, I forgot to get to-dos. Okay, save it, get to-dos. So when I click on it, nothing happened. Okay, take a look at the console. Oh, you unknown action types. Oh, fetch to do. Am I using, oh, it's actually to do with the s. Okay, let me change this. Okay, fetch to do. You see here, we're actually getting the response from the API, right? But somehow, if you try to, instead of calling the okay, increment, yeah, so this is how you do the async function. So you call the action can, like I said, it is not recommend to use the async function inside the mutation, right? Because the day 2 we actually lost track of your mutations. So this is how you call the functions. So this is the native fetch function inside Vue. So in this case we don't use any third party library like Axios. Okay, so this is how you use Vuex. So this is how you get the access to the store. So I'm gonna just keep it like this. Okay, and I will uncomment the Pinia. I will just okay, let's talk about Pinia. So what is Pinia? I think not I think so if you talk about Pinia also used for state management as well. So the same thing with the Vuex, but Pinia is a little bit different from Vuex since it has less boilerplate. So in order to create Pinia, you have to actually, first thing you have to create or register Pinia store inside main.ts first, file main.ts. So in order to create or register the Pinia store, you have to import create Pinia from Pinia, and then you have to use .app.use create Pinia, but this one with a function, because we want to initialize this, we want to call this function immediately. So this one is actually creating the store, the global store for your projects, your Vue app. Okay, so that's how we create the initialize the store. So but how do we create or define our store? So by default in Pinia, so you have the modular store. So each store can be defined in the separate file. So let's say if you have counter store, you can create your counter store here. If you have, let's say you have user store, right? User store, you can create your user store here. And the way we create Pinia store is just import the Pinia store here. So you can import the define store here, and then so for naming convention, I think you can use the use before the your store name. So use counter store, use start with use and then end with store. So to just identify your store names, so we're gonna name this store as use counter store, and then so this one is the ID of your store. So this one must be unique. So so inside your store, inside your define store, it actually need only three I don't know how to call it, but it only need three objects here. So one is state, another one is scatter and action, right? So if we compare this to Vuex, it actually we don't have any mutation anymore. So inside our Pinia, we can actually modify the state directly inside the action. You can see here. So we have state, we define our state here, which is the count value, and we have the getter to get the double one, right? And we also have the action where we can just go and trigger this action, and then it will just modify the state immediately, right? Okay, so we have two functions here. We have two actions here inside our Pinia. So one is increment and another one is decrement. The same implementation as the Vuex function. So if you take a look at the how we import and use this Pinia, you can actually import here, use counter store from Pinia store / Pinia's counter store, and then we're gonna assign this value to here. So whenever you write like this, we actually initialize or try to import that store to use in this component, right? So in that case, you can actually, right, I think how do we do this? Okay, so you can actually call the function directly using Pinia counter. Let's say you want to increase the count, you can actually call Pinia counter here, right? You see here, Pinia counter dot decrement access the function directly, and then let's take a look at our example. So if we call this, you see here, the store will actually changing right now. So if you take a look at the dev tool, things for dev tool, you will be able to access to Pinia store as well. If you install, I think Pinia is automatically integrated inside the dev tool. So if you take a look at here, if I increase the count, you can see here we can see the action. So this is the start of the actions. So start actions, it will have some description about your store name, action types, also event, and this is mutation. So in between each actions, it will fire or trigger a one or more mutation, right? So in this case, we are trying to modify the counter state. So we're gonna call the mutation of type set, right? Store inside store counter. So this is operation and count, and key is count, and key, this one is actually the variable's name, key, our key. So the old value was 0, and then the new value is 1. So every time we click on the plus icon, it will actually increment the store by 1. And also, so this is, you can take a look here, and then this is the end. You can see here, if I expand this a little bit. So increment start, increment end, right? This is how Pinia track your timeline, right? This is, so if I click one more, you see, start, mutation, and then ends, right? So this is how you check it. I think the similar thing with, I think similar with the, oh wait, where's, I think it's gone to, wait, how do I close this? Okay, wait. Oh gee, what's wrong here? Okay, view here. I forgot how to close this. Wait. Oh my god. Okay, Pinia counter. Vuex. Okay. You can click on this. Okay, Pinia root. Okay, Pinia counter. Can encounter keep state getter. UX. I think I want to take a look at the timelines here. Okay, timeline. You see here, increase increment. So every time the action got being triggered, so this one will be tracking. So UX mutation. So action plus increase start, right? So I think mutation and action, it got divided into two separate track timeline. So you can actually only track the mutation if you trigger the mutations. So inside mutation tab, you can actually see only mutations. So if I increase, it will call the increment mutations, right? So increment again. But I think, I'm not sure what's wrong with this, but I can see only the current state of the value. So it's a little bit weird here. So if I decrease, it actually, okay, one, decrement. Okay, because somehow I call decrement 2 times. You see here, I call action as well as the commit, right? I'm not supposed to call the decrement 2 times. Okay, again, I think if we decrement, you see only one decrement being triggered, right? Mutations. So if you here, decrease start, decrease end, right? So if Pinia is a little bit special here, since each mutation and action will be tracked inside one timeline. So you see here, increment, decrement. Yes, I think that's it. So this is how you can implement Vuex and Pinia. So I think since Pinia is a little bit new, so I think you can try it, and if you feel confident with it, I think you can try to implement it inside your production app. But I think a lot of things that we can do with Pinia, so it's more less boilerplate, a little bit easier to maintain, because each store will be divided into each own file, so we don't have to worry about maintaining module, or we don't have to worry about uh, Vuex enum type, let's say, if you want. So we have the naming convention by using the enums, static enums. So this really a bit hard to maintain when the projects grow bigger. So I think, but Pinia Store, it actually divide everything into separate module. You just import the that store, and then you can use that store, right, everywhere. Okay, I think that's it for this video. So I will see you on the next video. I hope you will not get bored watching this, because sometimes I just get overwhelmed with what I want to explain. But I try to explain something and then I think of other thing, and we just keep getting more and more. So I hope you enjoy this video. I will see you next time.